Good to go. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, Ritesh. Adam, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about Current, what you guys do?
Yeah, certainly. Current, we're banking for those overlooked by traditional banks. It's a pretty good way to put it, right? Meaning that we serve those who, well, you and I, for example, right? Like we can go, and most people listening to this broadcast, we can go into Chase, we can go into Bank of America, and it's not your favorite app on your phone, right? It's not your favorite experience, but like it works. It's not fundamentally broken. There's nothing terrible about it. And you've probably been banking there for the past decade or two. Really high retaining product banking is, right? At least personal bank accounts. Probably you've been using it longer than you've been using your iPhone. It's pretty remarkable. But that's not the case for the other half of the country, right? Especially if you're young. If you're paycheck to paycheck, if you're an hourly worker, if you're a freelancer, the traditional banking system does not really work for you. And it's because you don't really fit the traditional banking model, which is that they make money by loaning out your deposits, selling you a credit card or selling you a mortgage. And well, if you're paycheck to paycheck, by definition, you don't have the deposits to lend out. And especially if you're young, you're probably nowhere near that mortgage and maybe don't have the credit score for one of those premium credit cards. So instead, they make your experience pretty miserable, right? Between overdraft fees, maintenance fees, et cetera, you're paying hundreds of dollars just to maintain a bank account. You're being charged money for not having money. It's just terrible. So enter in Current, right? We're obviously far more cost efficient than a traditional bank. We don't have brick and mortar locations every other block and all that stuff, or legacy infrastructure. But we're more than just an online bank, right? We have a fundamentally different business model. The majority of our revenue comes from interchange fees. Those are the fees that are charged on the merchant side of a transaction, which is pretty cool because that allows us to make money from a customer who without it coming from that customer, right? So it's pretty powerful. What it really means, I mean, our customers themselves don't really care about that, right? What it means for our customers is that we can build a product and we can build a brand that's relevant to them.
Exactly.
And that's what we've done. So we have, a slew of features around, faster money, without all the shitty fees, and quite a few features that just kind of make sense for a digitally first generation, right? This is a generation that's grown up using Snapchat as an app, and that type of experience is what they've come to expect. And then, man, you try and have this this customer or this user use like a regional bank credit union's app that's like web load, and like it's a disaster, right? It makes no sense. Right. We're bringing a much better experience there.
Quick question, Adam. I'm curious. You guys are building Current, right? You're a digitally native company. You have a lot of advantages. A lot of companies, however, that don't have the advantage that you guys have, being digitally native and being in financial services, are trying to move from being data driven, right, more about reporting, sort of generation one dashboards, and looking at those heuristics, to being more insights driven. Can you give us a sense of how the Current team is not just sort of leveraging data, but also generating insights from that data and then acting on them?
Yeah, certainly. Well, we're fortunate. You mentioned we're digitally native. I've worked in the marketing space and specifically with a lot of mobile apps for a good portion of my career. And we all have access and are digitally native. But what's different a little bit here at Current is just how rich that data is, right? Like we go through what's called a KYC, know your customer process for all our customers. That's where we verify their ages, we verify their addresses, we know where they live, we know who they are truly, which adds a little bit of friction, but what gives us really rich data, right? We know where you work, we know where you spend your money. And that's really important, right? It's important because it allows us to understand our customer. And for a product like banking, you really need to understand like a customer's entire life, their pain points, their desires, what they aspire to be. it's a much broader understanding that you need of customers. So having all that data, it's tremendous. I mean, I would not be able to.
It's a tremendous luxury. At the same time, it begs the question, which is how do you then filter all that data? What are your top areas of focus, the thing that you guys are solving for? Keeping priorities of efficiency, insight, customer insight, or acquisition, whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, I guess from an acquisition standpoint, we're very focused on conversion. I mean, you have, probably a slew of different financial apps on your phone, but there's probably only one that you would really consider to be your primary banking option, and that's where your paycheck goes. And so our core KPI is around direct depositors. And so getting somebody's direct deposit, which is a process, right? It involves building trust. It's, if you're talking to somebody, especially if somebody who's paycheck to paycheck and you're asking them for their next paycheck, it's essentially asking them for all their money, right? You need to build a level of trust there over a long period of time for somebody to give you that. Now, if a user ultimately decides to trust us with that, we then return all this value, right? And it's this positive feedback loop. They then go tell their friends, and they're happy with it, and we grow. So in terms of a data focus, conversion is certainly high up on the list.
And you mentioned trust. It's a wonderful topic. We could do a webcast, I think, just on trust. I'm curious how the current team is building trust with prospective and current customers to really both drive acquisition as well as customer lifetime value. How is data sort of helping you in that dialogue with customers to build that trust?
Yeah, well, it's a process. I mean, we launched this 2.5 years ago. I mean, the company started 6 years ago, but most people in the market don't really know who we are today. I mean, that's the reality. So relatively young brand. I mean, look, we've raised a few $100 million. We're a Series D company. I like to feel proud about that, but the reality is most people still don't know who we are. So it's a process. We do. One is investing in brand marketing, which is certainly something we do. Kind of a little bit of a fast track for that for us is a lot of the work that we do with influencers. So influencers are a really big part of our marketing strategy. If you just go to current.com or check out our socials, it'll kind of hit you pretty quickly. And when I say influencers, I mean YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTokers, Twitch streamers, true personalities, right? Who people have trust in. And so, when they endorse us, you really fast track that trust process. I think, especially with a young consumer, and we have a largely Gen Z millennial consumer base, they've come, rightfully so, to become very skeptical of digital ads, right? Maybe an older generation, Gen X, might relate to this in terms of like banner ads and some of those early banner ads we used to see on the internet, and you knew to be skeptical of those. Well, that's the exact same way that a Gen Z, a millennial, feels about maybe a random Instagram ad, right? It's like, oh, that's just an Instagram ad. They understand anybody can run that, right? And so getting an endorsement from a person who they trust, I think really goes a long ways in terms of building that trust with the customer.
In terms of your teams are building insights, right, to build trust customers, focus on acquisition and conversion, and building your business. And I'm curious, being that you guys are nimble and digitally native, are the insights going beyond the marketing team to other parts of the organization, such as product or engineering or finance, and across cross-functional teams really kind of collaborating on building those insights?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely. And the key is how do we work together with that data? The worst situation you find yourself in, well, I guess the worst situation is if you're not looking at the data at all, but you wouldn't really get very far if that was the case. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're looking at one set of data, product is looking at a different set of data, finance is looking at a third set of data, right? And nobody's speaking the same language, right? And I'm optimizing for one thing, our product team's optimizing for a different thing. You really want to be very, very much aligned there, and thankfully we are. I mean, we have cross-functional teams operating within departments. That's important. An example of that within Current would be like the growth team, which spans both product and marketing. But even our KPIs are shared KPIs, and so by definition we have to be talking about the same data. So that's really important, and something that we've had a strong handle on here at Current.
Yeah. So it's sort of building insights in part of the cultural fabric of Current.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of companies
and it's not just for us. We actually pass that back to the customer. We we deliver those our insights are and informing people about, hey, how they're spending, how that compares to previous months. Even simple things like, hey, this is how much money you made this month. This is how much money you spent this month. That's like a very simple statement that shockingly banks don't really give you. They'll tell you your balance. But like, do you know how much money you made last month? You probably don't. It's just not. Do you know how much money you spent last month? Do you know if this month is different than that? You probably don't actually have a firm grasp of those things. You probably have a stronger grasp of just like, hey, how much money is in my bank account? And so, we're focused on data, and then as our customers, and we fulfill that need.
I get a lot of questions from people around how can senior leadership empower their teams, particularly when companies are highly siloed. People build sort of fiefdoms, they covet all their data, they don't really share it. Is how can senior leaders really empower and or incent the teams to really kind of share data, build those insights collaboratively, to be able to kind of hit their objectives. So how do you guys do it at Current?
There's no magic answer to that. I'd say like the truth of the matter is it's actually really about personalities and relationships. From the leadership level. I think if you have a culture in which you personally are I like the term truth seeker, right? Who is constantly searching for just the truth, not searching to be right, not searching to prove a point, not trying to be defensive. I think that's a culture that can trickle down and trickle across teams, where people aren't they don't question data, they don't question a point, they don't question analysis as being biased, because nothing should be biased if the goal is just to find the truth and everyone is aligned on that goal. Whether that proves me right and makes me look like a genius because I told you so. If that's my goal, then you can never really, that's a very dangerous path to go down, versus my goal being, I just want to get to the right answer. In fact, I would love to be wrong, because that probably means there's an opportunity that I haven't, taken advantage of. And so we're just fortunate, again, among the leadership team here to have, personalities who are less ego driven and more truth seeking.
That's a good cultural value. The inquisitiveness of being able to search for data, search for answers, and it sounds like you built a culture where it's safe to be able to have a differing opinion.
Yeah, well, I've been here for 2.5 years. I can only take a bit of the credit. Current started 6 years ago. Our founder Stuart Sopp has done a really good job building that team.
Very cool. You mentioned bias. It's kind of interesting leading to the next question. There's a lot of buzz around AI and machine learning enabled technologies. There's a lot of stuff out there, whether it be academic literature or just marketing material. We all know some AI ML driven technologies are not so learning, if you would, and some of them really are. And I'm curious, have AI and machine learning enabled technologies, have they empowered your team to be more efficient in generating insights and sharing and disseminating those insights? Or is the promise for AI and ML, is that promise still a bit elusive? And you guys are still doing things in I don't want to say traditional way, but more of a non-AI kind of way.
Yeah, well, I mean, one, from a marketing perspective, anybody in marketing is leveraging AI and ML, right? I mean, over the course of time, when it comes to the biggest digital channels, right, your Facebooks, your Googles, et cetera, I mean, I remember, maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, the best user acquisition folks were, all about, targeting and all these bidding strategies and all this, segmenting that you would do on these platforms. Truth is, today, you fast forward, and we've handed over the keys in many ways to the platform themselves to do that targeting. I mean, and you have different levers, certainly fewer of them, but it's like more about, oh, what events am I optimizing towards?
Yep.
And what events can I build to optimize towards and predict behavior and all that. Those becomes the primary drivers. And again, that's all based around ML. And then from a product standpoint, a tremendous amount. I mean, we could go into just, I mean, as a banking institution, it's, I mean, the amount of transactions that we see. I mean, the numbers are pretty tremendous. So no, it's for us, it's not like ML and AI are like, oh, someday that'll be our savior. No, it's today.
Here and now.
It's a reality.
That's great. I know, obviously, as we mentioned beforehand, Current has some great advantages. You're digitally native. You guys are agile. You're in banking, which means you have absolutely enormous amounts of data about all your customers and even prospects. However, I'm sure there's still some real challenges in terms of growing your data capability. Can you share some of those challenges and what you've done to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I mentioned earlier how we have to really kind of understand somebody's life, right?
Yep.
Beyond just their banking and,
yep.
and their financial relationship. It means a lot of things happen outside of current and outside of what we can measure, right? Maybe, particularly from a marketing standpoint, right? Somebody understands current, sees our ads, gets our value props, takes no action until, hey, Wells Fargo comes through and hits them with a third overdraft fee. And they're like, okay, you know what? That's it. I'm doing it. I'm done with it. And current's top of mind and takes that action, right? That's not something, we wouldn't be able to measure that exogenous action, right? Same thing could apply. Oh, hey, I got a new job, I'm setting up my direct deposit. Maybe I already have current, right? I have the card, everything, but I've never actually switched over. But that's the time I do it, right? And that's something that happens offline. And so it doesn't mean, while we don't get explicit user level measurement on an event like that, in the aggregate, you can draw pretty strong insights, right? To understand how in aggregate, customer behavior changes based on, again, specifically marketing. And again, this comes with the advantage of knowing who our customers are, because we both know where they are if we're talking geographically, but we also know in terms of timing what that is as well. And again, we don't live in like ecosystem that's blocked off from the rest of the world. I mean, we just, everything from COVID to that. I mean, again, anything that affects your real life tends to affect your banking life.
Of course. So Adam, you guys are so advanced already, but I can't help but ask, what's next for Current?
Well, growth in every sense of the word. We're here in New York, proudly based in New York City. We're growing as a company. We're actually moving offices later this summer. I'm excited about that. So hiring very aggressively, and from a customer standpoint, look, we raised our Series C from Tiger Global this past fall. We just announced our Series D about a month ago from Andreessen Horowitz. It's we have a lot of money, and with that we have a very exciting opportunity to really write our brand story for the first time for most customers. I find that many venture-backed companies, many tech companies, many tech products, maybe they grow based on performance marketing, maybe they grow based on virality, maybe they just grow based on like a killer product. And then at some point when they've reached ubiquity, they then go back and they're like, oh, wait, everyone thinks we're this. Well, we need to actually be this, right? We need to rewrite our brand story. We're in fortunate position to be able to do that, the right way, right out the gate, which I think is far more efficient,
Of course.
certainly, but a really exciting opportunity because again, I'm proud we've got millions of customers. I'm proud of how far we've scaled. I'm proud of how far we've gone. But part of what's made us very attractive to our investors is how large the market is. And so we really just scratched the surface there.
That's amazing stuff. An amazing story. Thank you. We have a lot of questions. So I'm going to go down the line here, Adam. First one is, what can heritage brands learn from newer digital-first brands when it comes to authentically marketing to Gen Z?
I think it actually, the answer is somewhat right there in the question, which is like the authenticity.
Right.
You have to be willing to be uncomfortable a little bit, right? Because if you're not uncomfortable with what you're doing, then you're a heritage brand, then kind of by definition, you're not there. And so, I think it can be tough. And I've seen some brands do it better than others. And for some brands, they're like, hey, you know what? We are stuck with our generation. We are what we are. And then they just need to spin up a new brand for a new generation. But I think in today's world, especially how segmented things are, you have a lot of opportunity to deliver relevant messages to relevant people on relevant channels. I mean, even on a channel like Facebook, or an Instagram, which is big and fairly broad, you can deliver, 12 messages to 12 different audiences, right? I mean, I think the generational differences that we have today are really unique, based on algorithms and the bubbles that we've now, come to be familiar with, which is to say, today, the most popular person, in this country to a 23-year-old, it very well could be a social media influencer. It could be a Mr. Beast, who, people listening to this right now are like, who the hell is Mr. Beast? It's probably the first time where the most popular person to a 23-year-old, a 35-year-old might have not even heard of, right? That's never really been the case, right? It might be, okay, the most popular, when I was growing up, maybe the most popular person was like an athlete in my world, but everybody had heard of that athlete, right? Even if but that's not the case today with a lot of and again, it's you hear this over and over again, this idea of like, how have you never heard of this? And it might even come from peers, where it's like, oh well, something in my bubble, in my echo chamber that's been repeated 40,000 times, I just assume it's common knowledge, was actually never even touched the bubble right next to me. Not to mention the one too over. And so I think you do have the ability to kind of build relevant personalities and a relevant brand in individual spaces, so that you can be, Chips Ahoy, and as Chips Ahoy, you can be one thing to the kids who want you, and you can be another thing to the parents who are buying it. Random example.
And I think you've already answered a good amount of this question, but maybe you might have some more to add. This one asks, how does marketing to Gen Z differ from marketing to millennial audiences?
Well, there's a level of authenticity that I think is really important. We're often very explicit in our marketing at Current, and what I mean by that is, and I'll actually touch on our influencer marketing again because it's a good example. When we sponsor influencers, it's a very explicit relationship. It's, hey, Current gave me money, and with that money, I am going to do X. That's generally the format. We're not trying to obscure the fact that there's a financial relationship between us, right? Which I think is very different from previous generations. Maybe for some, I'm a millennial myself. But when I'm seeing LeBron James take a bite of a Big Mac or drink Powerade, it's more so like, oh, so he likes that, right? Or at least you're convincing me, you're trying to convince me that he likes that. And I think especially Gen Z will sniff that out right away, and they'll be like, no way, I've seen that guy dunk. He doesn't eat a Big Mac. And so I think the explicit relationship that we have is fundamentally different, particularly from a celebrity standpoint, because somebody might see a LeBron James, and okay, nothing against LeBron, and be like, oh, he sold out. You see this especially in like the music world. Let's say your favorite rock band, all of a sudden you see them on a Gap commercial, you're like, oh, they sold out. That mentality doesn't really exist with Gen Z. With Gen Z, it's much more about like, hey, go get your bag. That's awesome. I'm glad to see this person who I feel like I have a much more direct connection with succeed. And so the explicit nature of that sponsorship is something that we lean into as opposed to the opposite. And it would only make sense to.
Good. Well, I'm going to read this question out of respect to the person who posted it, but I think you addressed a fair amount of this as well. And this one reads, what are the most effective influencer marketing strategies to best appeal to Gen Z? What changes, if any, do you believe need to be made to influencer marketing trends to better appeal to Gen Z?
Again, the authenticity. There's a trust factor when working with influencers that's really, really important. And that trust goes both ways. And I think it's something that's often overlooked by brands. Yes, I need to trust the influencer, but the influencer needs to trust me to trust them, right? And what I mean by that is that this is actually, and I've been working with influencers for the better part of this decade, right? And it used to actually be pretty easy because these are creators who they create. It's what they do. They create great content. It's natural for them. And so when it came to integrating brands within that, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, they would just do that. But then as the space became more crowded, more brands came in, they started getting punished for that, right? They started getting punished for making great content instead of on-brand content, right? And so then they started getting used to, okay, you know what, give me the script, I'll read the script, and if I say everything word for word, it'll get accepted, and that's what I should do. And that's kind of a habit that we've had to, break some creators out of. And ultimately, I mean, that's what they want. They don't want to do that. I mean, if they're super lazy, perhaps, but if they're super lazy, they would not be as successful as they are, right? These are generally like very hardworking and ambitious people who want to make good content. And so if they can trust, if they have the trust in us, that we'll be okay with that, and we'll accept that, then the outcome of it is typically great content, which is exactly what we want to be associated with. The last thing we would want to be associated with is, oh, this is a brand that just wasted 30 seconds of my time.
And I'm curious, as a follow myself on influencers, do you measure influencers more on immediate value performance marketing basis, looking at more sort of tactical KPIs, or do you guys look at or it's more of or do you look at influencers more about having long-term brand effects that actually have a level of impact on brand equity?
Well, you said the and/or, and that's exactly it. It's both. And if you want to treat influencers as a marketing channel, I'd say even then it's not any different than other marketing channels, right? Is TV a branding channel or a direct response channel? Truth is, it can be both, right? Is Facebook a branding channel or a direct response channel? Again, same idea. So it certainly drives both, and I mean, for us, it's even beyond that. I mean, it's become part of our product strategy as well, and product experience, and we build stuff for influencers, custom experiences for their fans. It's pretty in depth.
Awesome. 2 more questions to go. This one reads, based on your experience, what company values matter the most to young consumers?
Question. I think being relevant, number one. I think Gen Z has a pretty high standards, far less tolerance for things. And it's funny because in the banking world, there's so much stupid stuff that we've just been forced to tolerate. And if you're 40 years old, 50 years old, you've just gotten used to it, and that's the norm. But like a 20-year-old's like, no, this makes no sense. I have alternatives. I'll I was going to sign up for your thing, but now I'm just going to sign up for the other thing because it's going to take me 60 seconds to download that app. Versus, maybe in our world where I was like, well, I'm already here. They already have my license. I've filled out this entire application telling people, every detail of my life. I guess, yes, I accept these, shitty terms. I don't think that's the case for Gen Z. I think they have higher standards. And I think just, again, being real and authentic about who you are, what you're providing, is super important versus some facade and some fake story, which, again, it's not to say that you can't massage things and position things, of course. That's we're storytellers as marketers, but like at the core of it, it has to be real, it has to be authentic, or else I think you'll fall flat.
Yep. And last question, I think you addressed this in your bubbles and brand relevancy, and how you can be relevant to different cohorts or demographics. But again, I'll sort of respect the question, and it reads: how do you target this new demographic in an effective way without losing older consumer bases?
Yeah, no, we certainly touched on it. But I mean, I don't want to dismiss it as like, oh, it's super easy. I mean, again, where the grass is always greener, right? But we're a new brand, we're a challenger brand here at Current. So, losing some legacy customer that we added 10 years ago isn't something that I need to be worried about. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask on that.
Yep. Okay, well, we got some more questions. People seem to like our two more questions. One question for you is, are you guys is Current plan on moving into any kind of crypto?
The answer I can say publicly is yes. And we've actually, we've struck up some partnerships with Akala across with Polkadot. I'm not the best crypto person to speak with. I'll be honest. I'm very excited about what we have. And I think actually, if you talk to our CEO, our CTO, they're crypto dudes going way back, deep crypto dudes. And we haven't built cryptos for crypto's sake, right? We've kind of held off to the point where we're like, okay, does this add value to people's lives? Is it? And we think, again, it's taken time for the crypto space to evolve, but we think it has up to the point where it can. So yeah, we're really excited about some stuff we have coming up there. So I used to always be a little bit more secretive about this, but I can say definitively the answer is yes.
Yeah. Now the financial services space, particularly in retail, is super crowded. You got the big major players, JP Morgan, Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, all those guys. You got new digitally native players like Better, and there's a whole bunch of others. Plus you have the retail brokerages trying to kind of push their way into retail banking. Schwab bought TD. Fidelity plays a little more into not your quite demographic, but they're still taking up a lot of share of voice in media. This question foots to that, which is, what ways is your brand working to stand out in the eyes of the consumer?
Well, it's interesting because all those brands you just mentioned, right? I mean, I think American Express is a great brand, and they've done really cool stuff. But a lot of that stuff that they did was now 30 years ago, right? And they have a spot in a generation's mind that I think is amazing, and they did a great job with. But it's not relevant today to the bulk of this country, right? And almost everybody else you just mentioned, that's the case. I mean, even with us, where and within fintech, kind of like, hey, we're going after wealthy millennials was like the first shot that fintech took, right? And there's a number of brands who've been able to do that. But us kind of going across the broadest swath of America, and again, a young millennial, Gen Z generation that they haven't been in the market that long. I don't know, it's a cool opportunity for us to do so. And so I guess if the question is how, I've probably touched on some of that with probably our most unique way, again, using influencers.
Interesting. So sorry, I got some more questions coming in. Sort of pick and choose. There's not a whole lot of time. You know, the volume for me is, I'm an old Gen Xer, right? So the amount of new marketing instruments that have come up just since my time being in marketing has been unbelievable. In the past, you know, couple of years, it just seems to be accelerating month over month. The question is, how does current approach emerging media channels, and how do they factor into your overall strategy? I guess the question around, you guys have robust test and learn. You keep a percentage of your allocation just for sort of new things to kind of test out new stuff, kind of see how they work, in terms of keeping your eye on it, or do you guys stick with your plan and stick with what works and rock it out from there?
I'd say we follow pretty basic principles there of just like logic. It's like we look at, again, we know a lot about our customers. We know where they spend their time. Obviously, we know where we spend their money. And so, you know, if you take your average consumer's attention and you kind of split that up, where is that attention being spent? You can kind of start there. And so if there's, you know, yes, there may be every day there's going to be some new opportunity. But if it doesn't really pass that test of like, hey, does this occupy a significant portion of our customers' attention? Then it's probably not worth spending that much time on. That said, I mean, you know, depends on how fast you mean you determine emerging channels, because I mean, some of the channels that we've been operating on for years might be considered emerging still.
True, very true. Good. Oh, here's a good softball question for you, Adam. What is your favorite marketing campaign that you've worked on so far?
Oh man, yeah, tee that up.
Yeah.
You know, we've got. Well, you know, I'll say it's our Mr. Beast campaign. It's got to be. I love Mr. Beast. I'm a bit of a fanboy.
Yeah.
I was actually again, Mr. Beast. He's basically the world's largest YouTuber. I actually began working with him pre-current. You know, this is like when he was still only had 1 million subscribers, something like 4 years ago. He's one of my favorite people in the world, and super successful. I think he's now up to like 60, maybe 70 million subscribers. He's blown up. So being able to, we signed a long-term partnership with him, being able to build product with him, being able to collaborate has just been really cool. And again, we kind of have the commitment to each other, and that's what you get with that long-term commitment, for us to be able to do cool stuff and dedicate resources. So it's not just a marketing campaign. Again, it's a product strategy. It's pulling in engineering resources. You can go into current, here's a great example in terms of being relevant, right? You can go in, if I had an Amex card, I might get access to like some difficult dinner reservation. And that's kind of what they do well. And that's what's important to, a Gen X or an older millennial.
I miss going out to dinner.
Yeah. Well, for us, with current points, you can go get yourself a free Mr. Beast hoodie. It's a current by Beast hoodie in the app, pretty sick merch. And that's what's relevant to that generation. So
right.
There's the softball.
I love it. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate all the candor and openness. It's some good stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you. Adam, yes, Heath, great job moderating. And I just want to say, Adam, you made a point that all the influencers that you work with, they're very clear, about their paid relationship with you, and you're very transparent about it. And I think that goes a long way. You're absolutely right, especially with big celebrities, when they see so many different brands, being represented, is like, what is this, just yet another, thing that your agent brought to you, right? And there's really no authenticity there. So totally appreciate. And the other thing I love what you're doing is, I have teenagers in the house, and I can tell you the early financial knowledge that you guys are focused on to bring teens in as they start getting their first jobs, to really understand what money is it's an often ignored subject in our schooling system. And so, you know, for a bank to focus on not just educating them, but to getting them started with the right habits, to help them understand what they're spending on. I mean, this is excellent stuff. I really, really love what you're doing. And, you know, the big guys, I think, say they want to help, but it's not quite there. And I think your actions are right there in the market. So amazing listening to both of you. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to our next conversation.
I appreciate it. And my only plug is, if you want to learn more, please, current.com/careers. It's the best way to work with us. We're hiring like crazy here in New York.
If you want to do more with your data, Adverity.com, go there. You can do everything.
Wow, I love it. And I mean, I might as well get on the train if you want this shirt that I'm wearing. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So we'll keep going on our amazing day. And, you know, Adam did say something interesting, which is you got to be upfront, the fact that you're being paid. So I will upfront say that, you know, my hosting gig today is actually not being financially compensated by anybody. I'm here for the love of broadcasting. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'd love to welcome to the stage 2 members